which is on the least common multiple, or the LCM. Okay, it's not the GCF, okay, so don't get confused. This is something new, and it is called the least common multiple. Before we can really talk about the least common multiple, we need to have a pretty good understanding of what a multiple is. So we need to remember that a multiple is not the same thing as a factor. Factors are smaller, multiples are larger. So I want you to think back to when we talked about multiples and factors and see if you can remember what that is. Okay. A multiple is, if you think about the word multiple, it's like multiply, which makes things bigger. So a multiple is a product, which just means the answer to a multiplication problem, a product of a number and another number. Multiples are always bigger, okay? I really want to write that down and stress that because I don't want you getting confused in writing down factors. Okay, so multiples are bigger. That's really important. Okay, so when we're talking about the least common multiple of two numbers, we want to find the smallest of the multiples that are common. So we're going to do like we did with greatest common factor. And we're going to take two numbers, the numbers 5 and the number 6. Okay, so I'm going to write that down here. Okay, below this Venn diagram, we're going to have a 5 and a 6. And I want you to come up with as many multiples of 5 and 6 as you can. Okay, now let's take a little time and write some down. The way I think about multiples is I just start taking the number and multiplying it by as many numbers as I can think of. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 8 is 40. 5 times 9 is 45. You get the idea. And I could go on and on and on. Multiples are infinite, so I could list forever. Now let's list the multiples of 6. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 7 is 42. 6 times 8 is 48. 6 times 9 is 54. 6 times 10 is 60. Okay, and I just realized I could have listed 60 over here too now that I'm starting to think about it. 5 times 12 is 60. I could list that over here too. Okay, I'm going to put some commas in here just so these numbers don't run together. Okay, so these are a bunch of multiples. Now again, I could have a lot more multiples and you could have different ones than I do. But now, what do you think goes in the middle in this Venn diagram? Okay, just like with the GCF, what goes in the middle are the multiples that these have in common. So we need to look at our list and see what these have in common. The first one that I see that they have in common is 30. Okay, they also have 60 in common. Those are two that they have in common. And so we'll write those in the middle. And then, if you look at the title of least common multiple, we see the word least. Okay, that means the smallest. So we want to find the smallest of the common multiples. The smallest of the common multiples is 30. So that's the one that is the least common multiple. Okay. All right, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to make sure you have all that written down before I move on. If you need Mrs. Anderson to pause it here, you can ask her to pause. Okay. This video was made a few years ago when Mrs. McCauley had a sub named Mrs. Anderson. That's why it says that. So don't worry about that part. Let's go to the next page. Okay. Now, just like the GCF, we have two ways to find it. We can do the listing way, which is this way here. Okay. It's kind of like Dr. Phil. Or, look at this, we can use our birthday cake method. All right? And I'm sure you guys can probably know that I'm going to like the birthday cake method first, or a lot. But let's go with both ways just to see. So we want to find the LCM of 4 and 14. So let's make a little chart, okay, with 4 and 14 and list our multiples. And the way we list them is just to go in order. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 7 is 28. 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 10 is 40. And 4 times 11 is 44. And then I always start with the smallest number first, which is the 4. And then I go to my second number, the bigger number, and start listing the multiples. And as soon as I find the one that they have in common, that's the least common multiple. So 14 times 1 is 14. That is not a common multiple with 4. The next one is 28. 14 times 2 is 28. And hey, look at that. There is a 28 in the 4 column, so that is my LCM. Okay, LCM is 28. Now, let's go look at the cake method and see if that's any easier. Because as you can see, we could make mistakes on the other way with the listing if we forget to list something. So let's do the cake like we always do. Put the 4 first, then the 14, and then we find a common factor of 4 and 14. You should say that 2 is a common factor because they are both even numbers. 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 2 goes into 14 7 times. Now, hopefully you know that both 2 and 7 are a prime, and there's nothing that will go into 2 and 7 except 1. So you should know that our cake is done. Now, if you were finding the GCF, you would circle the side, and that would be 2. If you were looking to find a simplified fraction, you would look at the bottom and say 2 sevenths. But we are looking for the LCM. To find the LCM, we draw an L around the full outside of the cake. See the L here? You can tell that it's around the outside. I'm going to kind of make it bigger here just to make it really obvious that it's an L. And then we multiply everything that is inside. 2 times 2 times 7 equals 4 times 7, which is 28. How easy is that? Good job. Okay, let's do some more with the cake method. Okay, let's do 6 and 24. Okay, 6 and 24. What's the LCM of 6 and 24? We can divide both of these by 2 because they're even. 2 goes into 6 3 times. 2 goes into 24 12 times. Our cake is not done because 3 is a common factor. And 3 will go into 3 1 time and into 12 4 times. Let's draw an L around the outside. Okay, let's take this and draw an L around the outside. 2 times 3 times 1 times 4. 2 times 3 is 6, times 1 is 6, times 4 is 24. Okay. If we were to do that with the list method, we could, but let's just see what it would look like. We would have 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18, 6 times 4 is 24. We know 24 times 1 is 24. No big deal. Didn't take too long with the list. We found our match. So either one of those ways would be pretty good. Where we have trouble is if we get bigger numbers. So let's do, I want to focus again on our cake method. Let's do 3, let's do 3 and 18. Okay, I want to show you one thing. If you ever see that you have two numbers and the smaller number goes into the bigger number is the LCM. But let's test it out and see if I'm right. What can go into both 3 and 18? 3, obviously. 3 goes into 3 once and into 18 6 times. Okay, we draw our L around the outside and we get 3 times 1 times 6 equals 18. So my theory was true. So let's read a little note to ourselves that when, I'm going to stretch this out a little bit just so I have room to write. Okay. When the smaller number goes into the bigger number, the bigger number is the LCM. That's a trick or a hint. I'm going to give you one other hint too. I'm going to give you a chance to write that down. And then when you're done, I want you to add another sheet of paper because there's another hint that I can give you to make LCM even easier. Okay, your second hint, I'm going to write it right here for you. Your second hint is if your two numbers have no common factors except for one, then you can multiply the numbers together to get the LCM. The numbers to get the LCM. This only works if they have no factors in common except for one. Don't try to do this if they have a common factor. Trust me, it's not a good idea. So let's add just another page here and I'll show you some examples. So for example, we have 3 and 7. Okay, they have no factors in common except for 3 and 7. So you could do your cake method using 1. 1 goes into 3 3 times. 1 goes into 7 7 times. And draw your L. 1 times 3 times 7, which equals 21. But a faster way is to say, hey, I know these numbers don't have anything in common. Let's just multiply them together and get 21. Okay, but you don't want to do this if they have common factors. It doesn't work. Like 6 and 10, for example. 6 and 10, if you multiply them together, you're going to think the LCM is 60. But the LCM is 30. So this only works if there's no factors except for one in common. So for example, what if you got something like 15 and 17? Well, you should know that 17 is a prime number. So they will not have anything in common. So you can do 15 times 17, which will equal, let's do that off on the side here. 7 times 5 is 35. 7, that's 105. Placeholder. That would equal 5, 5, 255. So 255 would be your LCM here. Okay? So hopefully that hint will also save you some time. Okay? If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Bye for now.